And just like that, we're already to round number 14. There's only going to be 4 more races for these guys in the 450 class to sort everything out, and we only have 3 more with everybody on the East Coast. It should be a lot of fun to watch the East Coast tonight, as we have not had a repeat winner yet in the class, and we have the top 3 riders separated by only 2 points. So if you're new here, this is our race day update show. We're going to go over everything you need to know before the night show, the injury updates, the rider storylines, the track conditions, what we saw at press day, and we'll even top it all off with some rider statistics for fantasy and betting purposes. And if you guys have been here before, thanks for joining us again. Let's get into it. Starting things off with our injury updates in the 250 class, we have some good news this week. Devin Simonson will be making his Club MX debut. He did suffer that pretty gnarly wrist injury, but he's returning from that for the first time this year. Also, Hardy Munoz did hit a false neutral while racing last weekend in Philadelphia. Thankfully, he's okay. He banged up his wrist a bit, but he'll also be racing with us. Now, as far as Carson Mumford, he did have that scary looking ankle injury. It looked more like an ACL tear the way he was hobbling around at first and jumped in the back of the mule. Anyways, thankfully, it sounds like it's just a sprained ankle. He's not returned yet, but it sounds like he might return tonight. And then probably the biggest injury of the week was Daxton Bennick. He was the cause of that red flag. It's always a little scary to see a red flag come out like that. And it's also scary getting back-to-back concussions like that. Remember, he already missed 1 round of the season so far due to a concussion. So the update with him is that he did obviously receive that concussion, and he also fractured a vertebrae. Thankfully, his spinal cord does seem to be stable and he is making a full recovery, but obviously don't expect him to return anytime soon. And then another 250 rider that we had who got injured in Philadelphia was Gage Linville. His flew a little bit more under the radar, but honestly, it seemed like it was just as bad or scary as Daxton Bennick. He also got a concussion and fractured his vertebrae, and he even broke a rib and banged up his shoulder. Then Lorenzo Lucorcio did end up injuring himself racing overseas, so unfortunately he's probably done for the Supercross season. And then of course we do have our laundry list of riders that have had their same injuries from earlier on in the season that are still out. So that will be Max Anstey, Pierce Brown, Levi Kitchen, Cameron McAdoo, Casey Cochran, Jalek Swoll, Matty Jorgensen, and of course Chad Soltz, who did suffer that gnarly injury. It looks like he's making an adjustment to his new lifestyle, so thankfully that looks to be going good. It seems like the motocross community has helped him out quite a bit, so I love to see that. Now as far as the 450 side, we do have a little bit to talk about with Justin Barcia, who smashed his finger in. That looked pretty gnarly. And then obviously he had that rear brake issue where he just said that his rear brake totally failed in the main event. That's why he went over the turn like that. So that was pretty scary too. Thankfully he's relatively okay and he's going to be racing tonight. And then of course we have the freaking Terminator, Ken Roczen, who is racing with a banged up shoulder, that torn AC joint, and he's also got a very sprained ankle after Philadelphia. Not entirely sure how he managed to still get a podium last week. This man is incredible. Hopefully he can just stay safe out there and not further injure himself. And then we still have our same list of riders with the Lawrence brothers. Sounds like they're both going to be back on the bike and getting ready for motocross, so that's good to hear. Eli Tomac is also back on the bike. We are just waiting to hear if he returns for the last round or maybe the last 2 if he wants to go to his home race in Denver. And then we have both Kawasaki riders out with Jorge Prado and Jason Anderson. Prado looks to be on track for a motocross return. Anderson is a lot of question marks right now. Moving on to our 250 East top contenders, we have a lot to talk about here. Like I said at the start of the show, the top 3 riders are only separated by 2 points. So if any of those 3 guys win the main event, they will become the sole points leader. But anyways, at the top right now, we have Seth Hammaker. At the start of the first main event last weekend, it looked like he was probably going to get a pretty good hold on the championship as RJ Hampshire was completely off the back and Tom Vial wasn't really that far towards the front either. And Seth was out there tearing it up. So he's looked like the strongest rider as of late. But of course, when that red flag came out, that did kind of reset everything. Luckily for RJ Hampshire, he was able to capitalize on that. And he is now tied with Seth Hammaker for the points lead. So they will both be rocking the red plates, similar to how Seth Hammaker and Tom Vial were doing in Philadelphia. But if you're RJ Hampshire, this is feeling all too familiar. This is a very similar situation to what he was in last year. He had a lot of points to make up, and then Levi Kitchen ended up getting injured and he gained a lot of points, and next thing you know, he has the red plate with a few rounds to go and he ends up winning the title. Now, while there are some similarities between last year and this year, it is also still very different. Again, there are two guys who are contending with him right now. So it would seem that RJ probably has the speed, but he can't really afford to make any mistakes either. And then, of course, the guy in third, 2 points behind the other two, is going to be Tom Vialle, your other defending champion, the rider with the number 1 plate. And it feels like it would be very easy to just say, well, he's the third best guy. If that, he's probably not going to win the championship. He hasn't even won a race yet. And just look last weekend in Philadelphia, he couldn't even hold off a late charge from Joe Shimoda. Now, that's not to say Joe Shimoda is not great, but what it does say is that if you're a defending champion and a real championship contender, you should be able to hold off a late race charge. Having said all of that and considering all of that, Tom hasn't even won a race yet, and he basically missed a whole round by not scoring any points a couple of weekends ago, and he is still right here in the midst of this championship fight. So hypothetically, if he just stays rock solid, getting seconds or thirds throughout the remainder of the season, and the other two guys both have a bad race, he could still easily win this championship. I don't think it's the most likely thing, but it's even possible that he could win this championship without even winning a race. But speaking of him winning races, if he's able to win tonight, then that would keep our streak of different 250 East winners throughout the entirety of the season so far. Nobody on this coast has won a race twice yet this season. Personally, I want to see Tom win tonight just for that reason right there. Tighten the championship back up even more, and let's just keep this flow of different race winners going. Anyways, in fourth behind Tom Vialle is going to be Chance Hymas, and unfortunately he's now 14 points back after finishing in 10th last weekend. Still a really strong finish when you consider all the other riders that are also really good that he beat, but unfortunately that's going to knock him a little bit outside of the range of being within striking distance for this championship. Now, being 14 points down is really not that bad, but what does make it pretty bad is when you have 3 riders ahead of you. That's a lot of different guys that you need to probably have each make a mistake for you to really close ground on. But we have seen crazier things happen, so he's definitely still in the ballpark. At this point, it feels like he's probably just going to try to go after some podiums to finish off the season strong and stay healthy going into motocross. I'm really excited to see what he can do when we go outdoors. And then rounding out the top 5 in the championship right now is Cullen Park. And man, it's really cool to see Cullen Park up here. He didn't really get to race Supercross last year. I think he crashed out at round number 2 or something like that. He's now 26 points down, so more than a full race down. But being this close in the championship is pretty cool. Unfortunately, he did finish in 15th last weekend at the Showdown, so a little bit of a rough showing for him there, but nonetheless, still a really solid Supercross season. Then in 6th, right behind him, we have Nate Thrasher, who is now 28 points back. He's still coming back from that finger injury that he suffered earlier on the year. He kind of just raced through that, so that was pretty rough to see. But not skipping any races definitely paid off. He already got that race win, which was awesome for him. And if things go well tonight, he'll be top 5 in the points. The next closest active rider is going to be Max Voland. He should move up to 7th in the championship now that Max Anstey and Daxton Bennick are no longer competing in the series. It was really cool to see him get that heat race win a couple of rounds back. And it seems like he's starting to get that brake clutch combos figured out pretty good. The clutch is at least working for him. It's not burning up, so that's definitely important. So he's going to have 2 normal rounds to try to prove himself and, get some results that he really liked. I would not be at all surprised to see him contend for a top 5, and maybe even with a hole shot or something like that, he could try to contend for a podium. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Max ride just practice or stuff like that, but he is off the charts with his skill level. It's a lot of fun to watch ride. So I think it'd be really cool to see him get a good start in the main event and see what he could do with it. Behind him, we have Henry Miller, and he's now 60 points down. But man, it's awesome to see Henry Miller, super underrated rider. He's very consistent, pretty much always inside the top 10. Not really talked about nearly as much as he should be, or really at all, in my opinion. I don't really hear him talked about on the broadcast. And he's just rock solid. He's like always there. So shout out to Henry Miller. Unfortunately, last weekend, he was only able to grab a 17th, but he was still in there in the Showdown main event, doing the best that he could. And the last guy we're going to talk about is going to be Austin Faulkner, who is behind Henry Miller in the points right now. Personally, I'm a pretty big fan of Austin Faulkner and his story, and I was really excited to see what he could do this year. Now, obviously, it hasn't gone great, but one thing I am absolutely thrilled to see is that he has not got injured, so that's really good to see. That would have been really hard to digest. He's 64 points down right now in the championship, so 4 back from Henry Miller, and he was only able to grab a 16th last weekend, but he was getting his laps in, he was staying safe. Hopefully we can start to see some more speed out of him. We've seen it in qualifying, we know it's there. Right now it seems like a confidence issue. It feels like he's kind of locked into that mid-pack group and he's starting to feel like that's where he belongs or something like that. So hopefully he can break free of that. At this point, I just want to see him get through Supercross healthy, get a full season under his belt, another good off season, and I really wouldn't be surprised to see him come out swinging next year in Supercross and start doing really good again. The next 3 riders in the championship behind Austin Forkner are all of our injured riders. So we have Carson Mumford, Hardy Munoz, and Gage Linville. We talked about all of them in the injury updates. It'll be interesting to see how those guys shake out this weekend, if they all ride. Obviously, Gage Linville's not. Just wanted to shout them out really quick right here. But anyways, moving on to the 450 class, obviously at the top we have Cooper Webb, who did exactly what he needed to do last weekend. He was able to finish a close second behind Chase Sexton and show that he can definitely keep the pressure on. And while he wasn't able to get back around Chase Sexton and try to find a way to win that main event, which would have actually been very helpful, he did apply some form of pressure throughout the main event and he finished right behind Chase Sexton. With that being said, it's a little bit concerning seeing him get beat in the heat race like 2 weeks in a row straight up, getting passed and beaten. Obviously not the same thing as the main event where he absolutely thrives, but these next 2 rounds of racing should be more his type of tracks, and then the last 2 are more Chase Sexton type of tracks. So if he cannot get a little bit more of a points advantage heading into Salt Lake and Denver, maybe there is a real reason to be concerned. As far as Chase Sexton goes, he also did exactly what he needed to do. He had to win that main event because he was 15 points down, and with 5 rounds remaining, he has to essentially win out if Cooper Webb gets second right behind him, and that would only tie them in points. But thankfully for Chase, the tiebreaker would go to him with more wins at that point. So by being able to win that main event, even though Cooper Webb did finish in second, he's still in control of his own destiny. If he continues to win the main events throughout the remainder of the series, he will be your champion, regardless of what Cooper Webb does. One thing I thought was interesting and worth mentioning though, is he can't just beat Cooper Webb for the remainder of the series. Hypothetically, if Chase gets second, Cooper Webb gets third at any of the rounds, and then Chase Sexton wins the rest of them, that would still lose him the title. So if you assume that Cooper Webb is always going to finish right behind Chase Sexton, he literally has to win the rest of the main events. Obviously, I'm sure he's not thinking about it quite like that. He's going to take it one race at a time and do his best, but at the same time, he knows he has to win. That whole dynamic would change if Cooper Webb does finish in third or fourth or something like that. But until that happens, Chase has to win. And the moment that Cooper Webb beats him, now Cooper Webb is in control of Chase and his destiny. He can manage the championship, just finish in second to finish out the series. So keep your eye on that dynamic tonight. As far as Ken Roczen goes, he's still on his little island there, third in the championship. He did manage to get third again last weekend, which was absolutely incredible to see. When I saw him limping off the track with that ankle injury, I honestly thought that he was done for the year. So the fact that he's still racing with us, just that right there is a lot. But even being able to manage a podium on top of that was absolutely awesome to see. Anyway, he is 38 points down in the championship right now. And then behind him, we have Malcolm Stewart, who is 74 points down. He was able to leapfrog back ahead of Justin Cooper after last weekend. I don't think there's any real pay bonus for fourth in the championship, but still a little interesting dynamic between these 2 guys, Justin Cooper and Malcolm Stewart, who are kind of going back and forth as far as the next best guy besides these top 3. Justin Cooper is only 1 point behind Malcolm Stewart, 75 points down in the championship. And if you look at his results from last season, he did finish off the season pretty strong in his first full Supercross season. He even got second at the final, I believe. So look for him to keep building. He could be a podium threat once again. Remember, he's already been on the podium this year. And if he can somehow manage to get a race win, that would make some real history with, I believe, 8 different 450 winners this year. So that would be really cool to see. But anyways, Justin Cooper, Malcolm Stewart right here, 4th and 5th. And now up to 6th in the championship, we have the American hero, Aaron Plessinger. Man, it's awesome to see Aaron Plessinger doing so good, getting up on the podium consistently, getting another race win. I love knowing that he's not going to be a one-hit wonder, meaning he only won one race. He's 94 points down the championship, so well out of range of the rest of the field ahead of him. But at the same time, he had 2 DNFs at the start of the season, so he's really rebounding well right now. He did secure himself a ride for next year with KTM, so you know he's feeling good and you know he wants to go after another race win. The interesting part is going to be, does he play a factor with this championship fight? But right behind him, we have Justin Barcia, who is definitely trending in the opposite direction. He's kind of going downwards. And we did see him have bike issues last weekend with his rear brake just completely failing and sending him up and over the turn. And on top of that, he's injured. So definitely not a great place for Justin Barcia, but he's only 97 points down in the championship, aka 3 behind Aaron Plessinger. So if he can somehow turn things around, he could definitely fight back and get that position back in the championship. But realistically, he's probably going to finish 7th in the championship this year. Behind him is Jason Anderson, who's obviously out. So the next guy is going to be Justin Hill, and he's only 2 points behind Jason Anderson right now, so he's going to be leapfrogging into 8th as long as he can score a few points tonight. I think it's really important for Justin Hill to continue to gain as many points as he can. I don't know that Team Tedder is going to do many or any motocross races. We saw him do like a couple of rounds last year, and he scored minimal points in those rounds, and ultimately ended up causing a problem as far as him trying to get directly qualified into the SMX main events. So he's definitely riding better this year. I believe he's scored a lot more points so far. Hopefully he won't have to deal with any LCQs come the SMX playoffs. But if you see him pushing hard and trying to push his way forward in the main events, I'm sure that's part of the reason why. Obviously he wants to do as good as he can. He seems to be taking things a lot more seriously, and in his own words, he's really enjoying it for the first time in a long time. So either way, I love to see that. Always love to see Justin Hill out there. He's great for the sport in my opinion, and I would love to see him get another top 5. Interestingly, only 13 points behind Justin Hill, we have Shane McElrath. So obviously we saw him get that podium, and he's been just riding pretty solid. So it doesn't really feel like he should be this far into the top 10 in the championship, but at the same time, it's awesome to see him here. As of right now, he is the best Honda rider in this championship. When you consider both of the Lawrence brothers, Dylan Ferrandis and Joey Savacci, are all on Hondas, pretty much everybody didn't have that on their bingo card, especially when you consider that he only had a part-time ride with Quadlock Honda coming into the season. So awesome way to grab the bull by the horns, Shane. Hopefully you can keep the momentum up and finish strong, and you're going to need to finish strong because right behind you is Dylan Ferrandis. After a very strong finish the last couple of rounds, he's only 1 point behind Shane McElrath, and he seems to absolutely love that factory Honda transmission that HRC is giving him. While he seems to be a little bit bummed to not get the full factory bike, he did get some parts, and that does seem to be helping him. And it's cool to see him still out there getting good finishes and really representing Phoenix Honda pretty well. Then we have a bit of a gap back to the Beta boys. 32 points behind Dylan Ferrandis, we have Mitchell Oldenburg, and then only 2 points behind him, we have Benny Bloss. And these two guys have been going back and forth. Mitch Oldenburg had a much better start to the season, and Benny Bloss has been consistently well inside the top 10 the last few rounds. Interesting little dynamic going on here, especially with Benny Bloss being renewed going into next year for Beta. Haven't heard anything for Mitchell Oldenburg yet, so that's pretty interesting to keep an eye on. It looks like a really good vibe under that team, and some pretty good banter between the two teammates. They seem to get along pretty well, so that's always good to see. But don't kid yourself, when they're out there on the track, they both really want to beat each other. Then right behind them, we have Joey Savacci, who is trending back upwards again after missing the main event for the first time ever 2 rounds ago. He bounced back very well with a top 5 finish. So he's only 4 points behind Benny Bloss. I would expect him to pass both of the Beta riders, considering that he missed, I think, 1 or 2 rounds. Technically, I think it was 1, but it was basically 2 by the time you count the fact that he didn't make the main event. He's definitely well outside the top 10 in the championship at this point. That doesn't mean he can't finish strong and get the momentum going in the right direction. He'll probably race some World Supercross again this year, I believe. But listening to his interview after the race, it sounds like he was pretty frustrated with his opening laps, and then he kind of got things together and finished strong. So if he can get another really good start like he did last weekend, don't be surprised if he's an outside threat for that podium. To our fantasy statistics and things like that, we do have to note a few things about the schedule and the weather. So the good news is the weather is looking pretty good this weekend. Looks like there's just a slight chance of rain early in the morning as they're going to be starting practice. The rain should be pretty much completely gone if we get any precipitation at all. And for the first time this Supercross season, it's going to be borderline hot during the racing. It should be around 80 degrees as they start the heat races, so that's going to be interesting. At least it's not cold, and at least it's not raining, so we'll definitely take that. The reason it's going to be 80 degrees at the start of the heat races is because it is a day race. So that means that Race Day Live is going to be kicking off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, and the actual quote-unquote night show itself will be kicking off at 3 p.m. Eastern. So that's 12 o'clock if you guys are on the West Coast. Make sure you get your fantasy picks in time. Don't want to miss that window. We also had some pretty cool takeaways from press day today. There were a lot of top guys missing, but one guy that was there was Justin Barcia. Sounds like he was born about 10 minutes away from the stadium. And while he doesn't have much family that still lives in the area, he did say that he still has a lot of friends that are going to be out there tonight, so that'll be cool for him. He also said that they looked back at the footage of the race and it looked like he got together with somebody at the start of the race last weekend, and that ended up messing up his master cylinder of his rear brake, and that ended up being the reason why he did not have a rear brake. So they went ahead and installed a guard to try to protect that from happening again. As far as his finger injury goes, he was not riding this week, so he's really not sure if he'll be able to use his front brake. He did not use his front brake last weekend. So as far as I can understand, he rode the entirety of that main event with no brakes whatsoever, which is just kind of crazy. He also made some comments on the fact that he is looking for a ride next season, and it doesn't sound like he's working with an agent to secure that ride. He said that he's pretty much calling anywhere and everywhere, and that he doesn't have anything locked in right now. Another little interesting thing is we saw some behind the scenes with Justin Hill and his mechanic. And we've known for a while that Justin Hill is receiving a little bit of help from KTM, but we got some more insight to exactly what that looks like. He's actually running a pro circuit motor and full exhaust system, and that's paired up with some factory KTM internals. And then he has KYB suspension that's done up by Enzo Racing. And he also mentioned that they opted to switch to the 2025 KTM frame, even though they were on the 2024 last year. Then one other thing that stuck out to me was Devin Simonson said in an interview that when they plated his wrist, it was actually a plate that went all the way from his pinky, basically like halfway up his arm. It was a massive plate. I personally haven't even heard of something like that, so I thought it was pretty gnarly. He has been back on the bike for a while now, but he's only been riding Supercross for a couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see exactly where he slots into this field. I would imagine he's probably going to be like 12 to 15, at least in his first race back. But you know he's going to want to go out there and prove himself to the Club MX guys. Now, as far as the track itself, it does look pretty good so far. Some of the guys are saying that the track is good, some are saying they don't like it. Seems like the general consensus is that half the track is pretty flowy and good, and the other half is kind of technical. Seems like it could make for some good racing, some opportunities for passing. Now let's go ahead and get into our rider statistics. The first thing I want to mention is we did not actually race here in East Rutherford last year. We raced here in 2023, so I'll reference that a few times throughout this. But anyways, Cooper Webb has only been off of the podium 3 times this entire season, so you guys got to expect him to be on the podium. He's a very clutch rider. He's going to try to close out this championship. If he can manage to win any of these races, then he puts himself fully in the driver's seat for this championship. Hypothetically, if he wins tonight, all he has to do is get second for the rest of the season, and he will win the championship. He has 4 race wins so far this season, and he got 5th here in 2023. Chase Sexton is still in control of his own destiny. He won last week. If he wins again this week, no matter what Cooper Webb does, he could still win this title. It puts him in an interesting spot because anything but a win is not good enough. Does that mean that he just opens it up and sends it and wins easily? Or does that mean the pressure gets to him and he makes more mistakes? I'm not really sure. The only thing I can tell you for sure is that he had Cooper Webb riding behind him in the main event last week, and he did just fine with that. And he beat him here in 2023, where he got 4th. When it comes to Ken Roczen, everything I'm about to say has a caveat with him being injured, not only in his ankle, but also his shoulder. But anyways, he has not been outside the top 5 ever since these injuries occurred. He did beat Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb here in 2023 and was on the podium. One other thing I thought was worth noting, it doesn't seem like he's putting his injured right foot down in the corners. Seems to be generally trying to keep it on the pegs, so that could also play a factor. Malcolm Stewart started 4th last weekend, finished in 4th. He definitely could be a top 5 guy. but he's only had a handful of top 5s so far this season. On top of that, he did not race here in 2023, so we don't know how he gels with this dirt. And in my opinion, there's a couple of other guys that look to be more consistently heading towards that top 5 than him, but he's definitely right there. Looking at Justin Cooper, I think he's probably one of those guys that is probably a little bit better than Malcolm right now. He did go down in the first corner, and he made his way all the way back up to 6th. He also looked really good in Seattle, but he ultimately ended up finishing 6th there as well after he landed on a tough block. Looking at the last 5 races, he's only even been in the top 5 once in those 5 rounds. So maybe you should consider that. He does seem to have the speed. He definitely struggles in the whoops. And as far as I can tell, there's 2 whoop sections back to back this weekend. So maybe not the best weekend to put him in your top 5. One guy you pretty much are guaranteed to put in your top 5 is going to be Aaron Plessinger. He has had 5 top 5s in a row up until getting caught up in that first turn pileup last weekend. And even though he was basically dead last after that, he still came back to 8th. After watching him in his heat race where he went around Cooper Webb and just kind of walked away, I thought he might be able to win. Who knows for sure what would have happened if he got a much better start. But even with a mid-pack start where he stays off of the ground, you have to expect him to finish in the top 5 at this point. There's one more guy I think we really have to consider for the top 5 here, and that is going to be Justin Barcia. Now, I obviously feel like this is a bit of a long shot with him already being injured, but at the same time, I don't think you can just write him off. He did win this race in 2023. He's a local boy, and we saw last weekend his starts can be good. If you take away the result last weekend, he's had 4 top 10 finishes in a row with his average finish being 6.3. So he's definitely right there just outside the top 5. Definitely not a wild card rider this week, I don't think. He should definitely be in the top 7 at least, and the wild card this week is 8th. So far we've talked about 7 riders, and I feel like these 7 riders we've talked about are in a tier above everybody else. Even though there's a couple of riders that we're going to talk about right now that have gotten top 5 finishes this year, they were kind of one-off deals in my opinion. Looking at Dylan Ferrandis, he could be a good candidate for the wild card. He's had 3 top 10 finishes in a row with an average finish of 7.33. If all the factory boys finish where they're supposed to, I think he's probably the next best guy, and that would put him right into 8th place. Let's not forget about Justin Hill though, who has been riding solid all season long. He's been well within the top 10 multiple times this season. In fact, he's been in the top 10 4 out of the last 5 races, but his average finish in those races is 9.4. So it would seem that he might need a little bit of help, but you never know. 1 or 2 guys goes down or just gets a bad start, he could easily land himself an 8th place finish as well. And then looking at Joey Sabachi, he did land himself a 5th place finish last weekend, so that was great, but he's only had 3 top 10 finishes this entire year. With Joey, he seems to be a lot more all over the board. Personally, I wouldn't pick him to finish 8th because I think he'll probably finish in like 6th or 7th, or he'll probably finish in 12th. But it's definitely possible. One more guy, interestingly, that we really got to talk about for this 8th place spot, which I did not really expect, is Benny Bloss. So I did kind of give him a shout out earlier on in the show. But honestly, in a way, he seems like he's probably one of the best picks for this 8th place wildcard. He's been in the top 10 4 weeks in a row now, and he has an average finish in those 4 weeks of 8.75. Keep in mind though that he's now the 11th rider we've talked about in the statistics show. So if you feel like pretty much all these guys are going to beat him, then maybe don't put him in 8th. With all that information, personally, my picks are going to be Chase Sexton for the win, Cooper Webb in 2nd, Aaron Plessinger in 3rd, Ken Roczen 4th, and then Malcolm Stewart rounding out your top 5. And I think I'll go ahead and slide Dylan Ferrandis in there for the 8th place wildcard. If you guys made it this far in the video, comment down below who your 6 riders that you would pick for these spots would be. And I just want you to know that I really appreciate it when you guys watch the entirety of these videos. It really does help me out a lot on the channel. Also, I want to let you guys know, if you are into motocross gaming, I do have a motocross gaming channel that we're just getting started right now. I'm actually putting out a lot of Supercross 25 content now that that game's out. So if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description below. It would really mean a lot if you guys would subscribe to that channel if you find it entertaining or of any value. And with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.